My wife threatened divorce for months, so I called her bluff, packed her things, changed the locks, and took back my house, peace, and self-respect. The text message came in at 2:47 post-meridium on a Thursday while I was at work. I am done with your controlling behavior. Maybe we should just get divorced, since you clearly do not respect me as an independent woman. She was at her feminist friend's house again, probably getting filled with more ideas about how terrible men are and how she deserved better than a husband who expected basic respect and partnership. This was the 6th time in 4 months she had threatened divorce. The pattern was always the same. She would go to her friend's place, come back with attitude, pick fights over nothing, then threaten to leave when I did not back down from perfectly reasonable expectations. But this time felt different. This time I stared at that message and realized something had shifted in me. Not something emotional or dramatic, just a cold, clear understanding that I was done playing this game. I forwarded the message to my lawyer immediately. Then I called him. She has threatened divorce again, I told him when he picked up. I want to know exactly what my rights are regarding the house. The house was in my name. I bought it 2 years before we got married, and she had never contributed to the mortgage or down payment. My lawyer confirmed what I already knew. Legally, it was my property. If she wants a divorce, she can have one, I told him. But she is not getting my house. Are you sure about this? He asked. Sometimes these threats are just empty. I'm sure, I cut him off. Start preparing the paperwork. I want everything ready to go. Next, I called her mother. The conversation was brief and to the point. Your daughter has decided she wants a divorce, I explained. She will need somewhere to stay while we sort out the legal details. Can she come back home? There was a pause. She is threatening divorce again. Not threatening this time, I replied. Demanding. So, I am giving her exactly what she is asking for. Her mother's side, of course, she can come home. That girl never should have left in the first place. Interesting perspective from her own mother. By 4:30, I had 3 friends lined up to help with loading her belongings, a moving truck reserved for Saturday morning, and a clear legal strategy. I also made sure to screenshot every threatening message she had sent over the past 4 months. Documentation that would be useful if she tried to claim this was sudden or unexpected. The beautiful thing about preparation is how it eliminates panic. I was not angry or emotional about this decision. I was methodical. She had given me an ultimatum, and instead of begging her to reconsider like she expected, I was calling her bluff. My phone buzzed with another message from her. Are you even going to respond? This is exactly the kind of dismissive behavior I'm talking about. I typed back a single sentence. I will have your belongings ready for pickup this weekend. Your mother is expecting you. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. She had expected me to panic, to call her crying and begging her to come home and work things out. Instead, I was treating her threat like the serious legal matter she had made it. Friday morning, I took a personal day from work. There was a lot to organize, and I wanted everything handled properly. This was not about revenge or spite. This was about finally accepting what she had been telling me for months. She wanted out. Fine, the door was right there. Friday morning, I walked through the house with a clipboard, methodically cataloging what belonged to her versus what was mine. Amazing how little she had actually contributed to building our home together. Most of the furniture, appliances, and household items had been purchased by me, either before the marriage or with my income during it. Her belongings fit into a surprisingly small category: clothes, personal items, books, some decorative pieces her family had given her, and that expensive coffee machine she had insisted we needed, but rarely used. My lawyer called at 9 ante-meridium to confirm the paperwork was ready. I have prepared a formal notice of intent to dissolve the marriage, he said. Since she initiated the request via text message, and this is documented as a pattern of behavior. You are in a strong legal position. Good, I replied, checking items off my list. The moving truck comes tomorrow at 8 ante-meridium. You are sure you want to move this quickly? He asked again. She has been threatening this for months, I explained. I am not moving quickly. I am finally responding appropriately to repeated threats. At 10 ante-meridium, my 3 friends arrived to help with the packing. These were not random acquaintances. These were guys who had watched this pattern play out for months, who had seen how she treated me, who understood exactly why I was taking this step. About time, one of them said when I explained the situation. She has been holding this threat over your head for too long. We worked systematically through the house. Her clothes went into suitcases and boxes. Her books were packed carefully. I was not going to give her any excuse to claim I damaged her property. Everything was handled professionally, like a business transaction. The coffee machine was the last item we loaded into the truck. $1,500 for something she used maybe twice a month, but insisted was essential for her morning routine. Well, now she could have her essential routine at her mother's place. Around noon, I called her mother again to confirm the timing. The truck will be there around 2 post-meridium tomorrow, I told her. Is that convenient? I will be here, she replied. Then after a pause, I warned her about this behavior. Told her that threatening to leave someone was no way to build a marriage. You tried, I said diplomatically. That girl has been spoiled her whole life. Thinks she can say whatever she wants without consequences. Maybe this will teach her different. Harsh words from her own mother, but revealing. Even her family had noticed the pattern. By evening, everything was packed and ready. The house looked different without her clutter, cleaner, more organized, more peaceful. I realized I had not felt this relaxed in my own home for months. I sent her one final text. Your belongings will be delivered to your mother's house tomorrow at 2 post-meridium. The divorce papers will be filed Monday morning. This time, my phone rang immediately. You cannot be serious, she said, her voice higher than usual. You are actually going through with this? You asked for a divorce, I replied calmly. I am giving you exactly what you requested. But I was just frustrated. I did not mean I actually wanted to end our marriage. You have said that same thing 5 times before, I pointed out. At what point do your words actually mean what they say? This is insane. You are throwing away our whole relationship over a text message. I am not throwing anything away, I corrected. You threw it away when you decided threatening divorce was an acceptable way to handle disagreements. I'm just finally taking you at your word. The call ended with her hanging up on me. Perfect. One less conversation I would have to have tomorrow when she realized her belongings were actually gone. Saturday morning at 7:45, the moving truck pulled up in front of the house. My friends were already there with coffee, ready to load her belongings for transport to her mother's place. Everything was organized and ready to go. At 8:30, while we were loading the last boxes, her car turned into the driveway. I watched through the window as she sat there for a full minute, staring at the moving truck like she could not process what she was seeing. She got out of the car slowly, walking toward us with this expression of complete disbelief. Her feminist friend was with her, probably there for moral support, or to witness whatever drama she was expecting to unfold. What is this? She asked, gesturing at the truck. What are you doing with my stuff? Moving it to your mother's house, I replied, continuing to carry boxes without breaking stride. Like I told you yesterday, you cannot just decide to kick me out of my own home, she said, her voice getting louder. I stopped and looked at her directly. This is not your home. The deed is in my name. You have never paid the mortgage. And more importantly, you asked for a divorce. I did not ask you to throw me out on the street. I am not throwing you on the street, I corrected. I am sending you to your mother's house, where you will be comfortable while we finalize the divorce you requested. Her friend stepped forward, probably thinking she was going to mediate the situation. Look, maybe everyone just needs to calm down and talk this through like adults. We tried talking for months, I told her. Every conversation ended with threats of divorce. So now, we are having a divorce. Problem solved. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, stared at the truck being loaded with her belongings. You are really doing this? You are actually doing this? You did this, I replied. 6 times in 4 months you threatened to end our marriage. I am just finally accepting your repeated requests. She ran toward the house, probably planning to go inside and barricade herself or create some kind of scene. I calmly stepped in front of the door. The locks have been changed, I informed her. This is my house, and you no longer live here. That is when the reality hit her completely. Her face went white, then red, then she started shouting. You cannot do this. You cannot just change the locks and steal my home. I cannot steal what was never yours, I said evenly. And I am not doing anything illegal. I have consulted with my attorney, and everything is being handled properly. The neighbors were starting to come outside now, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Henderson from next door was pretending to water her plants while obviously listening to every word. This is insane, she yelled, loud enough for the whole street to hear. You are throwing away 3 years of marriage because of one text message. 6 text messages, I corrected, plus countless verbal threats. You made it very clear that you wanted out of this marriage. I am simply accommodating your wishes. Her friend tried to intervene again. Surely there is some way to work this out without such drastic measures. I looked at both of them calmly. The time for working things out was before she decided to use divorce threats as a manipulation tactic. Actions have consequences. My wife stood there in the driveway, watching her belongings disappear into the truck, finally understanding that her threats had been taken seriously for the first time in our relationship. The neighborhood had turned into an impromptu theater with at least 6 neighbors now openly watching from their porches and driveways. She seemed to realize she had an audience and decided to put on a performance. "This is what emotional abuse looks like," she shouted, pointing at me while addressing the growing crowd of onlookers. "He is making me homeless because I stood up for myself." Mrs. Henderson, who had heard our arguments through the thin walls for months, actually laughed out loud at that one. "Honey, we have all heard you threatening to leave him every other week. Sounds like he finally listened." The validation from a neighbor she barely knew seemed to break something in her brain. She spun around to face Mrs. Henderson with fury. "You do not know anything about our relationship," she screamed. "I know you have been yelling about divorce since you moved in," Mrs. Henderson replied calmly. "And I know he has been nothing but patient with you until now." That is when she completely lost it. She rushed toward the moving truck and tried to grab one of the boxes my friend was carrying. "You cannot take my things. This is theft," she yelled, pulling on the box. My friend looked at me with raised eyebrows. I nodded for him to let her have the box. She hugged it to her chest, like it contained gold instead of kitchen towels. "1 box," I said calmly. "You can save 1 box. The rest goes to your mother's house as planned." "I am not going anywhere," she declared, sitting down on the driveway with her box of kitchen towels. "This is my home too." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. "I am calling the police. You can explain to them why you are trespassing on private property after threatening divorce 6 times. Her feminist friend quickly intervened. "Wait, do not call the police. That is not necessary. Then she needs to get in her car and follow the moving truck to her mother's house," I replied. "Those are the only 2 options." The friend knelt down next to her and started whispering urgently, probably explaining that making this a legal matter would not work out in her favor, especially with half the neighborhood as witnesses. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson from across the street called out, "You handled this right, son. Cannot let people walk all over you in your own home." She heard that and jumped up from her sitting position. "Walk all over him? I am his wife. I have rights." "You have the right to file for divorce," I agreed, "which is what you have been threatening to do for months. So, that is what is happening." She looked around at all the neighbors staring at her, probably realizing for the first time how her behavior looked to outside observers. The support she was expecting was not materializing. "Fine," she yelled, "but I want half of everything. Half the house, half your retirement, half of everything." I could not help but smile at that one. "You are welcome to ask for whatever you want in court. My lawyer will be happy to present documentation of your repeated abandonment threats and the fact that you have contributed nothing to the mortgage or household expenses." Her friend grabbed her arm and started pulling her toward their car. "Come on, let us just go. You can sort this out later with lawyers." But she was not done making a scene. She pulled away from her friend and marched right up to me. "You think you are so smart, do not you?" she hissed. "You think you have won something here?" "I think I have finally stopped losing," I replied. That seemed to deflate her completely. She stood there for a moment, looking at the nearly empty moving truck, at the neighbors who were clearly not on her side, at the house she could no longer enter. "I hate you," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. "That is why the divorce is the right decision for both of us." As the last box was loaded into the truck, her entire demeanor changed. The rage evaporated, and suddenly she was a different person, soft, vulnerable, desperate. "Wait," she said, grabbing my arm as I walked toward the truck. "Please wait. Can we just talk for 1 minute? Just 1 minute." Her friend looked confused by the sudden personality shift, but I had seen this before. This was her last resort manipulation tactic when everything else failed. "There is nothing to talk about," I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. "You have made your position clear repeatedly." "No, I have not," she said, her voice taking on that pleading tone I used to find heartbreaking. "I was just scared. I was testing us because I was afraid you did not really love me." I looked at her with genuine curiosity. "You tested our relationship by threatening to destroy it?" "I know it sounds crazy, but I needed to know you would fight for me," she continued, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I needed to know I mattered to you. You mattered enough that I tolerated months of emotional manipulation, I replied. That should have been proof enough. She stepped closer, reaching for my hands. I love you. I love you so much more than anything in the world. Please do not do this to us. The neighbors were still watching, but now they seemed uncomfortable witnessing what felt like a private moment. Several of them went back inside their houses. I am not doing anything to us, I said firmly. You ended us months ago with your first threat. Everything since then has just been me slowly accepting what you kept telling me. But I do not want to end us, she insisted. I want to fix us. I want to be better. I promise I will never threaten divorce again. I promise I will change. Her friend finally spoke up. Maybe you should listen to her. She seems sincere. I looked at the friend with amazement. She seems sincere? She seemed sincere 5 other times when she promised to stop this behavior. How many times should I believe the same promise? My wife grabbed both of my hands now, holding them tightly. This time is different. I swear on my mother's life. This time is different. I will do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, anything you want. What I want, I said, pulling my hands free, is a partner who does not threaten to abandon me every time we disagree. What I want is someone who means what they say. What I want is respect. I respect you, she cried. I do respect you. Threatening divorce 6 times is not respect, I replied. It is the opposite of respect. She was crying harder now, real tears streaming down her face. Please do not make me go live with my mother. Please, I will sleep on the couch. I will stay in the guest room. Anything. Just do not send me away. For a moment, looking at her genuine distress, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You should have thought about that before you decided our marriage was something you could threaten to throw away whenever you got frustrated, I said. The truck driver called out that he was ready to leave for the delivery. My wife looked at the truck, then back at me, realizing this was really happening. I love you, she said one more time, her voice breaking. I really truly love you. I believe you do, I replied. But love without respect is not enough, and you cannot respect someone you keep threatening to leave. Her friend guided her toward their car as she continued crying. Come on, the friend said gently. Let us follow the truck to your mother's place. As they drove away behind the moving truck, I felt nothing but relief. The drama was finally over, and I could start rebuilding my life without constantly wondering when the next ultimatum would come. 3 weeks later, I was sitting on my back porch with my morning coffee, enjoying the quiet of my own home. No arguments, no threats, no walking on eggshells wondering what mood someone else would be in. Just peace. The divorce papers had been filed, and my lawyer reported that her attorney was trying to negotiate for spousal support and a share of the house. Both requests were quickly denied once they saw the documentation of her repeated abandonment threats and the fact that she had contributed nothing to the mortgage. My phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Thank you for sending her home. She needed to learn this lesson. Apparently, living back in her childhood bedroom at 32 had been quite the adjustment. Her mother had instituted house rules, no overnight male visitors, help with household chores, and a strict curfew. The feminist friend visits had been limited to weekends only. She cries every night about missing you, her mother had told me during one of our brief phone conversations about the divorce proceedings. But she is also starting to understand why you did what you did. I did not take any pleasure in her suffering, but I was not going to feel guilty about it either. Actions have consequences, and she was finally experiencing the consequences of her choices. The neighborhood had settled back to normal, though Mrs. Henderson still waved at me every morning and occasionally mentioned how much quieter things had become. Mr. Johnson had stopped by the previous weekend to help me install a new security system. Apparently, the whole situation had reminded him to upgrade his own home protection. My work performance had improved dramatically. Without the constant stress of managing someone else's emotional volatility, I had energy for projects I had been putting off. I got a promotion 2 weeks after she moved out. Probably not a coincidence. Dating was not even on my radar yet. I was enjoying the process of rediscovering who I was, without constantly adjusting my behavior to avoid triggering someone else's threats. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed cooking, reading, and having friends over without worrying about whether my wife would create drama. The house felt like mine again. I had rearranged the furniture, bought some new pieces, and set up a home office in what used to be her craft room. Every change made the space feel more authentic to who I actually was. One evening, her feminist friend called me. I wanted to apologize, she said. I did not understand the full situation when I was supporting her that day. "What changed your mind?" I asked. "Living with her for a week, while she looked for an apartment," she replied. "She threatened to move out of my place 3 times in 7 days because I asked her to wash her dishes. I finally understood what you have been dealing with." Even her biggest supporter had figured out the pattern once she experienced it directly. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks after that Saturday morning with the moving truck. No drama, no contested hearings, just paperwork acknowledging what we both already knew. The marriage had ended months earlier when she made her first threat. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and my self-respect. She got a fresh start at her mother's place, and hopefully some perspective on how relationships actually work. 6 months later, I ran into her at the grocery store. She looked different, less angry, more subdued. We exchanged polite greetings, and she mentioned she was seeing a therapist. "I understand now why you did what you did," she said quietly. "I'm working on figuring out why I kept sabotaging something good." "That is probably the healthiest thing you could do," I replied. "For what it is worth," she added. "You taught me that words have consequences. I needed to learn that." As I watched her walk away, I felt satisfied with how everything had turned out. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their destructive behavior. She got the lesson she needed, and I got the peace I deserved. Our story has come to an end. If you have made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I have selected 2 other videos for you that I am sure you will enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I will be waiting for you in the next story. Sitting here on the back porch a year later, with the sun setting over the yard, I've finally landscaped the way I always wanted. I can honestly say I've never felt more at peace. The house is quiet, but it's a good quiet. No more tiptoeing around moods. No more bracing for the next explosion. No more scanning every conversation for the moment it might turn into another divorce threat. Just the sound of birds, the wind in the trees, and my own thoughts, free and unfiltered. Sitting here on the back porch tonight, a year after that Saturday morning with the moving truck, I finally feel like I can breathe without checking over my shoulder for the next storm. The air is crisp, the stars are clear, and the house behind me is quiet in a way it never was when she lived here. Not empty quiet, just peaceful. The kind of silence that belongs to someone who isn't bracing for impact every time the floor creaks. I won't pretend the first few weeks weren't hard. There were moments when the absence hit me like a wave. Coming home to no one yelling about something trivial, cooking dinner for one and realizing I actually liked my own seasoning better, falling asleep without wondering if tomorrow would bring another ultimatum. At first, that absence felt like loss. But then it started feeling like freedom. Real, unapologetic freedom. The kind I didn't even know I'd been missing. People keep asking if I regret it. If I ever wonder what if I'd given her one more chance. The answer is no, not even for a second. Because every chance I gave her before that final day came with the same price, my peace, my self-respect, and the slow erosion of who I was. I spent months shrinking myself to fit whatever version of me she needed that week. Less controlling, more accommodating, quieter, more patient, while she grew bolder with her threats. I told myself I was being the bigger person, the mature husband, the one who wouldn't let pride destroy a marriage. But the truth is I was letting fear destroy me. Fear of being alone. Fear of being the bad guy. Fear that maybe she was right and I really was the problem. Calling her bluff that day wasn't about winning. It was about finally choosing myself. When I saw that text message and felt nothing but clarity instead of panic, I knew the shift had already happened inside me. I wasn't reacting out of anger, I was responding out of exhaustion. Exhaustion from carrying a relationship where one person kept loading the gun and daring the other to pull the trigger. I simply stopped playing. Watching her belongings disappear into that truck was surreal. Part of me expected to feel devastated, but what I felt was relief so profound it almost scared me, like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally let it out. The neighbors watching, her mother's quiet acknowledgement that this lesson was overdue, even her friend's eventual apology. None of that mattered as much as the moment I closed the door behind the last box and stood in my own house, alone, and felt safe for the first time in years. I used to think strength meant enduring. Now I know strength means knowing when to stop. There's a difference between commitment and captivity, and I'd been living in the latter while calling it the former. She didn't just threaten divorce, she weaponized insecurity, turning every disagreement into a referendum on whether I was worthy of her presence. And I let her, until I didn't. The best part? I never had to become bitter to protect myself. I didn't trash her to mutual friends. I didn't drag things out in court. I didn't gloat when her world predictably unraveled without me to stabilize it. I just moved forward, cleanly, decisively, with dignity. That's the real victory, not that she lost, but that I refused to lose myself trying to keep her. These days I wake up without dread. I make plans without negotiating. I laugh louder, cook what I want, leave dishes in the sink if I feel like it, and invite friends over without worrying about someone's mood. I've traveled alone, taken up woodworking again, read books I'd shelved because she didn't like the genres. I've remembered who I was before I started editing myself to avoid conflict. And yes, I've started dating. Slowly, carefully. With women who understand that respect isn't negotiable, that threats aren't communication, and that love shouldn't feel like walking through a minefield. The difference is night and day. Conversation flows without ultimatums. Disagreements end in solutions, not threats of abandonment. It's almost shocking how easy a relationship can be when both people choose partnership over power plays. Sometimes I think about her. Living back in her childhood room, working through therapy, finally facing the consequences her mother warned her about. I hope she's growing. I genuinely do. Not because I want her back, but because no one deserves to carry that kind of emotional chaos into their next chapter. But her growth is no longer my responsibility. That's the most liberating realization of all. I kept the house, the peace, and most importantly, myself. I didn't just take back my space, I took back my worth. And no threat, no tearful plea, no promise of change will ever convince me to trade that away again. If I could go back and tell the man I was a year ago one thing, it would be this. The moment someone shows you that your presence in their life is conditional, believe them. Don't wait for the seventh threat. Don't negotiate your dignity. Just open the door and let them walk through it, because the space they leave behind is where your real life begins. Tonight, sitting here with my coffee cooling beside me, I'm not the man who begged for respect. I'm the man who finally demanded it, and gave it to himself when no one else would. And damn, it feels good.